Hi, and welcome back to Bali Today. Well, the person responsible for designing one of the most fantastic lines of clothes, for me personally, I just love it. I love all the bright colors. I love all the different textures, is my guest today, so I'm so excited. I want to introduce you to Paul Rupp. Hi, Paul. How are you?
Hi. How are you?
I feel funny introducing you. I'm sure everyone already knows you. You're Mr. Media.
They know the clothes. They don't know the men.
Oh, that's true. That's true. And I've sought you out.
When I came to Bali, I was pulling water from a well, living in a little bamboo hut, with a long roof, no windows where there were doors, and no doors where there were windows.
When was this? What year? I know
78. I came over from India I went to India in 71 from New York, where I was born and raised, New York City, and came to Bali in 1978 to deliver a baby.
Yours?
No, actually, John and Marie DeConey, who the baby, as it turned out, is Medea DeConey, who has Lily Jean.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic.
I helped deliver a sister in Goa, in India, and then the parents asked me, because I introduced the parents in Brazil and married them in New York, so we're very tied to the family, and they said, come on in, we're having another one.
Well, I want to take you back. Christina, adorable Christina, was showing me all of Michael Borneo's photos, and then that led to the whole Goa tribe thing. What was the Goa Trail? What happened?
Well, a lot of us who got frustrated with America, in America, for example, but all across the planet, with what was happening politically, with the Vietnam War, we had some mentor say, tune in, turn on, drop out. And that's what a lot of us did. We just let go of the places we were born and raised and looked for another horizon, another color, another smell, another texture. And we found it, a lot of us, in India. And the most hospitable place in India was an old Portuguese colony that was liberated in 1958 by the Indian military. And
something to say thank you for.
Yeah, and it became a very hospitable place for backpackers and misfits and creative adventurers. And we lived there in very affordable housing, and the food was great, the people were great, the Konkani were just wanting to have us there because there was a very symbiotic sharing of what we came with, a little bit of culture, a little bit of money, a little bit of enthusiasm. And they had a beautiful, beautiful peninsula in India, and it was just the Jesuits had left and we had come. You know.
What a nice pendulum, yeah. And that was like a pendulum between the Jesuits.
Well, you know, a lot of the people came from Mykonos, a lot of people came from Ibiza, a lot of people came from all these little places across the planet where if you wanted to leave your society and begin to understand what else is happening out there, you know, places like Goa, places like Bali, you know, were just beckoning for some participation, some collaboration. And I was lucky enough to be one of those people who got there in the beginning of the evolution, when it was changing from a indigenous, exclusively Indian or Konkani environment to where the foreigners were coming in and bringing a taste of their own culture, and the restaurants started appearing. Because when I came to Bali, between here where we're sitting and Cafe Warasan, there was one restaurant between here and the airport. There was no electricity.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to make a telephone call, you had to go to the international airport. Yeah. Because that was the only place to make a telephone call from. There was no cellular phones. There were no direct lines. It didn't exist. And it was a different type of life. It was a wonderful life. And as long as you were respectful of the Balinese, and if you knew a few of the Balinese children, and you knew the dogs' names, we all walked. You had to know the dogs' names because we were all walking on these little gongs. There were no cement roads. No one had motorcycles or cars. It didn't exist. One or two of us had bicycles. I was a walker. So if you knew the names of the dogs, you know, they'd start barking, you'd call their name, they'd cool it, you know, and just keep on walking. If you knew the kids, the parents would come out and smile, and you knew you were okay.
When you first came to Bali, did you feel at that point that you'd be staying for the next 20 years, or What were you thinking at that time?
Well, Bali has a few of its own drawers, if you will. I tell the foreigners when they come to Bali, you got to watch out. There's two things. When you leave, you want to return, and when you return, you want to build a house, and then you want to start a business. But in my case, it was a little bit different. I came to Bali, like I said, to deliver Madej, help deliver Madej, and when I enjoyed Bali so much, I was just getting involved in business in New York. And I would get emails. It wasn't emails, excuse me. In that era, it was texts. It was telexes. And the telexes would come in and say, Paul, you said you were finished with the beach. So now what are you doing back on the beach? You said you wanted to work. What are you doing on the beach? So ultimately, I had to create products on the beach so that people back in New York would be okay with me not being there.
And stop hassling you.
Well, now I don't go to the beach much. I just, you know, doing a lot of work. But we created a PMA in Bali.
How many PMAs were there in existence when you did this?
We were the second PMA in Bali, which is a joint venture authorized by the government of Indonesia for the operation of manufacturing and export. And there were, the first one was an Italian company called Gajah Putih, which was Giorgio Calton, another designer who we were working together in India. And then I came right after him. So I was the second, he was the first, and that was the beginning of PMAs in Bali. When I came to Bali, the banks didn't know how to deal with letters of credit. We had to teach them. Alpha Sigma was our freight forwarder at that time, and no longer, but we had to teach them how to use letters of credit, and then Pacific Express became our major shipper, and in the old days, you did everything on a handshake. One day I needed $1 million to fill an order. The banks wouldn't give it to me in Bali with a letter of credit that authorized it because they didn't know how to work with it. But Rose, the owner of Pacific, gave me $1 million on a handshake. And it was all personal relationships. It wasn't as formal as it's becoming now. Then it was, you know, if someone believed in you, they put their trust in you, and if you performed, you had a relationship to build on.
I'd never seen a shop like yours, and I was here on my first investigation of Bali trip, and I walked into your shop in Kuta, down there in that little fashion square, and the colors and the textures of the material, it was just the most satisfying. And I'm not really a shopper. I don't like to shop. But I always like to go into fabric stores and just see all those things. And you've collected them from, I think, all over the world, right?
Well, no, actually, I've been working in India for about 40 years, and most of the things that we do are hand-woven in the homes. It's indigenous of the labor-intensive areas of development for each of the homes. And rather than spending 8 hours in the field, the mother will come in on the loom for a couple hours, and the father will come in. Then it's hand-embroidered, hand-embellished, hand-beaded. In your case, it's all of that. Yeah. And it's airbrushed. So it's block printed, airbrushed. That, by the way, that you're playing with, that after we do our production, that's usually what I used to pay people to come with their trucks and take away.
Yeah.
But now what we do is we've taught the villages all over Bali how to reproduce these things, and we take the waste off the floor, and instead of paying people to take it away, 18% of my company's income is derived from what we sweep off the floor and put in your earrings or the shoes or the bags, or recycle, labor intensive, but in the village, so that people can stay there as opposed to coming to the cities and looking for work.
That has definitely changed the character of Bali. I know.
Well, it adds to the character of Bali, to the culture of Bali, the village of Bali. The Kampung of Bali is really what, you know, we enjoyed the most when we came here. It wasn't so much the industrialization of Bali, but it was the, which has changed a great deal, because when I came to Bali, I had to do some work. So I was living in Solo in the Batik Keris compound.
Okay.
And Kampung. And I was working, as a matter of fact, I was working and I was roller skating. Because I was traveling around the world on roller skates at the time.
As in for media, or just for yourself?
Just, you know, I get off the plane, I get in these Rolls Royces that the Peninsula Hotel in Hong Kong would send me. They deliver me to the front doors of the Peninsula Hotel in Hong Kong. These little boys looking like monkeys with little round caps, with cups, would open up the door, and And I'd roller skate across the lobby as the cellos and violins would go and check in, and that's the way I was doing it. I used to roller skate down the only street was here. I actually used to roller skate at the Oberoi because that was the only cement they had.
Yes, yes.
And one little club in Legion called Maxie's. And I would, you know, because New York was the capital of roller disco, and you know, we loved it. We'd be doing 15 kilometers an hour with 500 people in the roughest neighborhood in New York City. And on Wednesday, they had white night. So it was a black neighborhood. Weren't allowed in the neighborhood during the week, except on Wednesday for white night. And then you'd go in and roller skate, and everybody would have a good time, roller disco. So I brought that to Bali.
Wow. Well, you sometimes have a fish out of water, and now we've got a New York roller skater out of pavement. But we're going to take a little break, and we'll hear more of these fantastic, phenomenal stories of Paul in first coming to Bali and making a life. So come back in a few minutes.